Ever since we got married, I've always lived as a family with my husband and his child from a previous relationship. However, suddenly, days began where they would coldly ignore me, and this situation has been going on for a year now. One day, in the dimming evening, as I was dragging my tired body on the way home, I heard the voices of Mike and Sarah coming from the parking lot.
Actually, I happened to see Jessica downtown last year. Even after all this time, she was still so beautiful and attractive.
Mom really was attractive. Compared to that, Naomi is so different in style from Mom.
Honestly, I can't stand to listen to her voice. Even seeing her walk around the house feels so unpleasant.
That's true. But if you think of her as a housekeeper who works for free, it's not so bad, right?
I guess you have a point. Even if she's unpleasant to look at, she does have her uses.
Mike laughed heartily at Sarah's somewhat joking words. Feeling something inside, my heart was filled with frustration and sadness, but I couldn't just stand still. As I approached the door of the house and tried to unlock it, I realized something was wrong. The key I usually use somehow didn't fit the lock. Relying on the light from a nearby street lamp, I looked closely at the lock, and to my disbelief, the color of the keyhole had changed. What was silver just this morning was now gold. From this situation, I realized I had been locked out of the house, and all my anger exploded at once. Do they see me as just a housekeeper? If I'm going to be treated like this, I'll leave, but I hope they don't come to regret and rely on me afterward. My name is Naomi. I'm living my daily life as a 53-year-old housewife. 15 years ago, I met a man named Mike at the company I was working for at the time. Back then, I was already in my early 40s, and to be honest, I had almost given up hope of getting married. However, as I worked on a project with Mike, I gradually became attracted to his sincere attitude and passion towards his work. One day, as my feelings for him grew stronger, he suddenly said to me, saying, "Would you consider dating me with the intention of marriage? I'm serious about this." As our relationship deepened, I learned that Mike had a 9-year-old daughter named Sarah from his previous marriage. She was a bright and intelligent child, and as we started our new life together, we often planned outings to strengthen the bond between the three of us. For instance, going to watch movies as a family or spending a day at a nearby amusement park. For such days, Sarah and I built a bond as if we were real mother and daughter. And a year after dating Mike, we got married. Life in our new family was filled with anxiety at first. At that time, I had a full-time job and was at the company until late in the evening on weekdays. However, I made it a point to cherish the time with Sarah on weekends. We baked sweets together, I helped her with her school homework, and we went shopping for new clothes at nearby malls, ensuring we spent quality time together. Mike and I also made efforts to enrich our married life. We enjoyed dinner dates at special restaurants on our anniversaries and exchanged heartfelt gifts on each other's birthdays, ensuring we spent time deepening our bond as a couple. However, as Sarah entered her teenage years, a slight change in the family atmosphere became obvious. Then, one day, a casual comment from her marked the beginning of that change.
Naomi, have you started to feel your age recently?
Sarah said this to me, who was feeling tired after attending a parent-teacher meeting during dinner at home.
Yeah, indeed. Saki and Anna's mom are already in their 40s, but they still seem quite charming, don't they?
Mike said with a smile as if comparing me with the other moms. Mike, I don't think it's appropriate to evaluate other moms that way. Are you always checking out other moms?
What? Are you a bit jealous? After all, what I'm saying is true, isn't it?
His grin was a bit irritating to me, but Saki and Anna's mom, being dance instructors and hairstylists, naturally care about their appearance due to their professions.
Naomi, not acknowledging your own lack of effort is a bit unseemly, you know.
Well, true. But maybe you should consider dieting a bit. It might help you like yourself more.
Hearing Sarah and Mike's words, I felt shocked and internally uncomfortable. I always prided myself on having an average body shape, but perhaps I look slightly plump from Mike's viewpoint. In fact, he has quite specific preferences, and I often hear his comments on beauties from TV or magazines.
Considering she works in the entertainment industry, I think she should be more mindful of her figure. She seems to have changed a bit post-pregnancy. She feels different from her prime time.
His stomach is coming out as he gets older, but when I pointed that out,
Men don't need to worry about such things.
He would assert, quite unconvincingly. Growing up under a father with strict beauty standards like Mike, Sarah naturally came to value appearances foremost. Sarah's biological mother was a model for a certain fashion magazine. The page she showed me featured her slim and beautiful figure. Sarah, inheriting her mother's tall and beautiful looks, stood out among her friends, many of whom couldn't quite match her beauty. From Sarah's viewpoint, someone of my average looks probably doesn't stand out.
Dad, why did you choose to be with Naomi?
When considering marriage, what's inside matters most.
But isn't appearance important too?
As I was doing the dishes after the dinner I took time to prepare, I silently listened to the parent-child conversation, coldly assessing my looks. Even though both of us work, Sarah never helps out with any household chores. When we were about to get married, he said I can work and relax. However, the reality is that I'm constantly busy with daily life and rarely get the time to relax. On the other hand, it seems like Mike and Sarah are lazing around even during the daytime. Especially, they seem to be enjoying beers and cocktails while watching their favorite variety show, feeling all relaxed. Hey Mike, Sarah, can you help me clean the living room? After you guys have some time. I thought I might ask for their assistance during the commercial break. However, both of them seemed uninterested, with expressions that seemed to say they didn't want to be bothered.
Don't you get how fun this show is? This is our relaxation time.
Naomi, you asked my father if you could continue working after getting married, right? If so, you should handle the housework properly.
To be precise, it's a housewife's duty. Since you're at home all day, you should take that responsibility.
Until now, I'd usually let their words slide, but this time I couldn't hold back. Sarah, you're already 23 years old. If you think about living on your own in the future, don't you think it'd be wise to learn the basics of housework?
Why are you so persistent? Are you unhappy with my decision to stay in this house?
What do you mean?
You're jealous of my close relationship with my father, aren't you? Envious?
To provoke me, Sarah wrapped her thin arm around Mike's thick arm and smirked mischievously.
I have absolutely no intention of leaving this house. I'll leave all the housework to you. Even as you age, I expect you to continue cooking, washing, and cleaning for me and my father.
I've never even considered Sarah moving elsewhere. This house is the best.
He seemed intoxicated, giving off the scent of alcohol, and smiled blissfully.
But Naomi, I wonder, you have an average face and figure. I've been going out less recently, but I used to be a little embarrassed to be seen with you. Because you're my wife.
Hey, Dad, don't be so severe.
Hearing their words, I tried to continue with my kitchen work. However, I couldn't prevent the tears from falling one drop after another on the kitchen counter. It brought back memories. I used to look forward to a future with a cheerful and adorable girl and a thoughtful man who loved kids. I knew remarriage wasn't easy, especially when there are children involved. However, I didn't expect it to be this severe. From Sarah's viewpoint, I might appear as someone trying to take away her beloved father. I can somewhat understand her feelings, but still, I can't forgive Mike for openly scoffing at me in public, holding a faint hope that perhaps, as Emily grows up, her feelings and attitude towards me might change. I've been patiently enduring for over 10 years. However, now that Sarah is 23, her attitude hasn't changed a bit. In fact, it has become even stricter. Then, an event more shocking than that took place. Celebrating our wedding anniversary was one of our small pleasures in daily life. Every year, I feel that day is special and have made it a tradition to prepare special dishes. On our most recent anniversary, I made meatloaf, a special fruit salad, and the family favorite corn soup.
This meat dish tastes so good. The cheese inside adds a nice touch.
Yeah, the texture of the meat is also great. I want seconds.
That's fine, I've prepared enough, so enjoy as much as you want. Their praise for the food was deeply ingrained in my heart as pure joy. However, from the next day, they started avoiding me as if something had triggered them. Even now, I don't understand the reason. In our usual days, whenever I try to talk to Mike or Sarah, they move away, acting as if they're not aware of me. I wonder if they're just not hearing me or are actively avoiding conversation for some reason. Initially, I tried my best to keep talking, trying to find the cause. Good morning. It's sunny now, but there's a rain forecast for the evening. You might want to take an umbrella when you go out. Mike, without reacting to my words, just continued to sip his miso soup. Beside him, Sarah, after her morning preparations, came into the kitchen and sat next to Mike.
Good morning, Dad.
Morning. Did you change your hairstyle? That pink highlight looks refreshing and suits you.
Mike gently stroked Sarah's hair, squinting his eyes with a smile.
Thanks, Dad. Speaking of which, I heard it's going to rain this evening. It's so sunny now, it's strange. In that case, let's not forget to take our umbrellas.
Another day. I'm home. I got this Baumkuchen as a souvenir from my business trip. I called out to Mike and Sarah while they were having dinner, but both continued eating without a word. Confused by their attitude, I quietly placed the gold-wrapped Baumkuchen box on the table. This place has a great reputation, and I've always wanted to try it. Make sure to leave some for me later. However, the next night, when I went to look for that long-awaited Baumkuchen, it was nowhere to be found. I felt bad about it. Slowly opening the kitchen trash can, there it was, a beautifully golden box. Furthermore, upon glancing at the sink, there were 2 plates and forks from after a meal. It's been a year since these subtle tensions began, and I feel the silent pressure from Mike and Sarah every day. At first, I was optimistic, thinking time would resolve everything. But things haven't shown any sign of improving. Mike and Sarah talk to each other as if I don't even exist, laughing and sharing their daily stories. Even when I raise my voice and say, hey, they don't respond at all. In moments like that, while they completely ignore my presence, they still clearly give commands like, what's for dinner? Or prepare the bath quickly. It's pathetic how I cherish any communication with them, no matter how minimal. What worth do I even hold in this household? Going back to living alone is an option, but I just started life as a family. The thought of leaving fills me with sadness. Amidst all the chaos and conflict, one evening after work ended earlier than expected, I arrived home sooner than usual. I parked my car quietly, and while crossing the parking lot, I overheard snippets of Mike and Sarah's cheerful conversation from an open window. Voices from behind the fine mesh screen reached my ears crystal clear.
She might be thinking of leaving this house soon. Don't you think?
I don't see any explicit signs, but who knows?
It would be less trouble for us if she left on her own accord.
If we actively try to push her out, it might look bad to outsiders.
I was surprised to learn how much they cared about their image.
But last summer, when I randomly saw Jessica in town, she was still so attractive and beautiful.
Listening to his dreamy tone, Sarah seemed to agree.
Mom was truly magnificent in style. Compared to her, well, there's no comparison.
Ever since that incident, to be honest, interacting with Naomi has become bothersome. Watching her move around the house stresses me out.
But if we think of her like a housemaid, she's essentially working for free. That's one way to be thankful.
Setting her looks aside, she is doing certain things for us. That's for sure.
Hearing the two of them laughing so genuinely, I was shocked and stood frozen. From their conversation, I inferred that they were talking about the beauty of Mike's ex-wife, Jessica. This made me think they began to question their relationship with me, hence avoiding communication. I sighed deeply and held my head in my hands, feeling the difficulty of coexisting in this house. I intended to go inside to think calmly, but as I was about to open the door, I noticed something off. I tried inserting my key into the lock multiple times, but it wouldn't fit. Under the streetlight, I closely inspected the lock and was startled by a realization. The lock, silver until last night, had now changed to gold. This meant I was being ousted from the house. A rage, unlike anything I'd felt before, welled up within me, not only ignoring me but also locking me out. This is unbelievable. If you want me to leave, fine. But if you come to me for help later, I won't assist. Emotionally charged, I returned to my car and, trembling, started the engine. For a week after being ousted, I gradually kept my personal cell phone off, expecting calls from Mike and Sarah. Fortunately, I had a work phone, which sufficed. Before noticing the lock change, I'd placed essentials in my car. I bought new clothes, ate at cafes and restaurants, and stayed comfortably in a hotel. A week later, on a relaxed morning, I powered on my personal phone. There were countless calls and messages. 90% from Sarah, 10% from Mike. As I was about to switch it off, Sarah called. Reluctantly, I answered.
Oh, you finally answered. I didn't expect you to avoid contact like this. Where are you now?
It's my choice where I am and what I do. If there's nothing important, I'm hanging up.
Wait, Naomi, please come back home.
I responded sternly to Sarah's pleading tone. What's the matter? Do you want me to clean up this messy house? Why don't you and your beloved father, whom you said you love, handle it?
But Dad never sorts the trash properly, no matter how many times I tell him. He even puts combustible trash and batteries in the same trash bag.
He's always been like that, hasn't he? But I don't want to spend my precious day off on such things. Goodbye then.
I'm really sorry. I was thoughtless, but could you please come back home? Please, Naomi.
Upon hearing her heart-rending voice, I sighed deeply without thinking. I had anticipated this situation all along. Despite that, why did they decide to kick me out of the house? I need to pick up a few things, so leave the door unlocked for me.
Really? Though, thank you.
When I arrived home, an irritable-looking Mike and a relieved-looking Sarah were waiting. The area around the kitchen trash can smelled terrible. Leftover food and used packaging materials overflowed, giving off a nauseating odor. On the table in the middle of the living room, there were cans of drinks. Mike had eaten up them, and they were scattered haphazardly. Empty bags of snacks and dried fish were carelessly strewn about on the floor. Shirts and socks that Mike had taken off were everywhere in the living room. A pile of unwashed dishes and glasses filled the kitchen sink. The scene in front of me was far worse than I could have ever imagined.
I'm so glad you're coming back, Naomi. Dad really doesn't know anything, from basic cooking to how to use the washing machine and even how to properly sort the trash. Furthermore, he's too lazy to even press the switch to start the dishwasher.
In response to Sarah's lament, I replied a bit sarcastically, I bet. Because you and your family have always taken it for granted, I would handle all the household chores. But at least it seems you, Sarah, know the basics of housework.
I've helped out a bit when I stayed at friends' houses, so I know a little.
Housework is basically a woman's job, right? When Naomi's not around, Sarah should take over.
Hold on, Dad. I have a part-time job after school, you know. Don't you think you should take care of yourself? At the very least, you could organize the clothes you take off into the laundry basket and properly wash and throw away the empty cans.
What are you talking about? Isn't it a child's duty to take care of their parents?
Faced with her father's arrogant tone, brimming with confidence, Sarah's eyes sharpened, and her face was filled with anger.
The reason I'm in this house isn't just to take care of Dad. I have my own life too.
If you don't like it, you can leave anytime.
If I leave this house, this room will soon be overflowing with trash. Do you really think you can live comfortably like that?
Sarah had begun to notice Mike's outdated values, especially his condescending attitude towards women. While I was watching their heated argument with a mixture of disbelief and amusement, Sarah raised her voice at me in her panic.
Naomi, this isn't the time to just stand there. Won't you help with the cleaning?
The reason I came back to this house isn't to help with cleaning. I just came to get my belongings.
Wait, is that really true?
You think I'd just come back after being kicked out? I have feelings too, you know.
That was just a joke. I didn't really mean it.
Watching her panic, I calmly walked to the bedroom. I slowly packed my clothes, cosmetics, important bank book, and seal into a bag. After arranging my other belongings for easy transportation, I left the house. Seeing this, Sarah seemed to give up on asking me to clean. For the next few days, my personal cell phone didn't stop ringing. At that time, my days were filled with work and other busy procedures. Therefore, I was staying at a monthly rental apartment. Even on holidays, I was busy visiting various places, so my daily life was very fulfilling. 3 months passed, and I received a call from Mike. His voice was clearly perplexed.
What's going on? I want a detailed explanation.
As soon as I answered the phone, he started questioning me with a serious voice. What's the problem?
Don't play dumb. A lawyer contacted me, saying we have to leave the house within a month. Why did you sell the house?
About that. Before I could finish, Sarah interrupted.
How dare you sell our house without permission? We're going to accuse you of this.
Amid the angry voice of Sarah coming through the phone, I couldn't help but smile at the absurdity of the situation. Don't you think it's my right to decide on the house in my name?
What are you talking about?
Oh, did you forget that? A few years ago, when I got a promotion and my income increased significantly, I changed the name of the house to mine.
Dad, really?
That's true. I couldn't help but be surprised that I couldn't remember such an important fact.
This wasn't supposed to happen.
From the other end of the phone, I could hear Sarah expressing her dissatisfaction loudly to Mike. I had a feeling another parent-child argument was about to start.
Anyway, I think we should reconsider selling the house. You agree with me, right?
Just after Mike said this to me with a slightly frantic tone, the call ended. Given the situation, it was easy to imagine that a discussion was taking place between Mike and Sarah about the matter. I've known for a while that Mike overstated his actual income when talking to Sarah, but I was honestly surprised to hear him talk as if he was bearing all the living expenses. After all, I had been covering most of the mortgage and daily living expenses. In the days that followed, I received messages and calls from him, like find us a luxury apartment for our new home, you'll regret selling the house, and please forgive me and come back. However, I calmly brushed these off and proceeded with the house sale procedures. A few days later, when I visited the house, I sighed even more cluttered with trash and unused items. We're handing over this house to the new owner in 2 weeks. Is this really okay? Have you already settled the contract for your new place? Expressing my genuine concern, both Mike and Sarah seemed a bit defensive.
I've told you so many times. Stop nagging. If you are so concerned, why don't you help clean up?
Right. You could at least lend a hand. After all, we're your family.
Over the year, my relationship with them had gradually weakened. Whose fault was it that I was completely shut out in the end? It was surprising to see them forgetting their cold treatment towards me and speaking as if nothing had happened. Fine, I'll arrange it right away. Since they agreed to my proposal, I decided to act promptly. I contacted a professional cleaning service and arranged for them to pick up the accumulated trash and unnecessary items from the house. For the two of you who aren't good at cleaning, I'd like the house to be thoroughly cleaned by the handover date.
Don't worry, leave it to us.
Thanks to the expertise of the cleaning company, the house was quickly tidied up. Later, I learned from the real estate company that Mike and Sarah had found a new home in an old, historic apartment building. I felt a deep sense of relief. Now that the house has been successfully sold, the next thing to consider was the divorce proceedings with Mike and the accompanying alimony issue. However, I couldn't imagine the negotiations with Mike going smoothly. With that in mind, I thought of a plan and decided to invite them to my new apartment.
Wow, such a modern interior. It's so different from the rundown apartment we live in. It seems like you're living quite the luxurious life.
Even with the harsh words from Sarah right after reuniting, I was able to endure. After all, I had tolerated their indifference and commanding attitude up until now, diligently working to support the household. Just because I bought a new condo, I don't think there's any reason to be criticized.
Hey, when are you really planning to come back? Sarah tried her best with the cooking, but it's not quite there. You can do better, right? Also, your family is waiting.
Leaving the cooking to our daughter Sarah, I felt Mike's statement was inconsiderate.
Hold on, Dad. Thinking of the menu, selecting and buying the necessary ingredients at the supermarket is quite tough, you know. So, if you have complaints, either cook yourself or help out.
Why are you raising your voice? It's very rude, especially coming from my daughter. This kind of trivial matter often led the two of them to start arguing. Amidst the argument, I calmly placed the divorce papers in front of Mike. Mike, I think we should get divorced. As for the division of assets and compensation for your past rude remarks, I'd like to discuss it properly through a lawyer.
What are you suddenly talking about? You're joking, right?
I'm serious. Smiling, I continued my words. I'm tired of taking care of you and Sarah every day without a single word of gratitude. If you really think you need a housekeeper, you should hire one and pay them a proper salary, right?
Don't say things like that. I'll never accept a divorce, and I have no intention of signing those divorce papers.
Sitting deeply in the sofa, Mike retorted with a strong tone. At that moment, I threw a piercing remark at him. Mike, you do know how many times you've been divorced, right? So, you should be able to sign even with your eyes closed. His face turned pale instantly, and next to him, Sarah was watching Mike's reaction with a surprised expression.
That was my second marriage. Are you even keeping count, Naomi? Are you sure you know my history?
Indeed, I heard that your first wife got fed up with your unbearable personality and decided to divorce you, even though Sarah was very little. And your second wife disappeared suddenly, not even a year after you two got married. I calmly conveyed the information based on the results of an investigation I commissioned from a detective agency. Judging only by appearance, you seem very approachable and considerate. That's probably why many women who wanted to marry rated you highly, right? And when you met Jessica at the cafe, she was moved by how you were struggling with parenting and decided to marry you. But once the married life began, she probably started to see your true nature and the relationship gradually cooled down. In fact, I have information that Mike had to pay a certain amount as compensation to Jessica related to troubles caused by his past infidelity. Right after Mike got married, he was lamenting not having any savings, and he blamed it on Jessica being stingy with child support. But Sarah just found out that it was actually because of the compensation payment. Being confronted with such a fact, Sarah became emotional and confronted Mike. Hold on, Dad. Were there 3 other moms while I was unaware? Or was the real reason for the divorce from Jessica actually her infidelity?
No, I've never cheated.
As Sarah's questioning voice echoed in the room, Jessica's voice could be heard from the back of the room. Both Sarah and Mike looked shocked, and then Jessica appeared from the room's entrance.
Wait, is that really you, Mom?
Why are you here? I never expected you to show up in a situation like this.
It's because I received a call from Naomi. She said she's having trouble with Mike's smug attitude and a slightly cheeky Sarah and asked for my help.
That's how it turned out. And she sighed, seeming relieved, and walked towards us. Looking at Sarah, she said sympathetically,
Mike's habit of exaggerating things hasn't changed, huh? Growing up with such a father, you might become a bit biased too. I truly feel sorry for you.
Both Mike and Sarah stood in further shock. In the midst of the two, I decided to relay my exchange with Jessica to Sarah. Actually, I sent a message to Jessica from the official site of the magazine she was featured in. I wanted to know the truth behind Mike's words. As a result, feeling that what Mike said might not be true, I asked Jessica to come directly.
But, Mom, was everything Dad said really a lie?
Gazing directly into Sarah's eyes, she nodded.
Everything that Naomi has said is true. I'm sorry, but I never thought it would come to this. The truth is, I'm not your real mother.
How could that be?
Sarah lost her words and hung her head. Seeing this, Jessica gently hugged Sarah, comforting her by patting her shoulder. I was deeply pained by this scene and reflected deeply on past mistakes. Given this situation, many people would lose faith in humanity. Sitting in front of me, Mike didn't say anything and just looked upset. From his demeanor, there wasn't a hint of remorse towards me or his daughter. Taking a deep breath and trying to stay calm, I lightly tapped on the divorce papers placed before me. Our lawyer should contact you by tomorrow for signatures and seals. It's okay to wait until all terms and details are finalized.
Just so you know, if we have to settle this in court, the costs will increase significantly.
Okay, I understand.
Leaving those words behind, Mike slowly picked up the divorce papers and left his seat. At the same time, Sarah, with a look of shock and confusion, began to walk uncertainly towards the entrance. After the two were out of sight, I expressed my heartfelt gratitude to Jessica, and we both headed outside the apartment building. Included in the amount Mike had to pay me was half the value of the house we once shared. However, the compensation I received was significantly more. Because of this, Mike seemed to be under a lot of financial pressure. Even more surprising, Mike asked Sarah to pay part of the compensation, causing a significant rift between father and daughter. Although Mike did eventually agree to pay the full amount of compensation in one lump sum, Sarah soon left his apartment and began living independently. She's now seriously committed to the job she previously had as a part-timer, aiming for a full-time position. Sarah had always left all household matters to me when living with Mike. Seeing her work so hard now was quite surprising. After Sarah moved out on her own, she faced the challenges of balancing household chores and work for the first time. Doing daily tasks like cooking, cleaning, and laundry took more effort than she expected. Her lack of experience in managing money was evident. Every time Jessica visited, Sarah's room was a mess, littered with trash. One could say it was like a hoarder's house. I want to cut ties with Dad, and I don't want to become an adult like that, have become Sarah's frequent phrases lately. The fact that she, who was once close to her father, now speaks such words made it clear how quickly a parent-child relationship can change. For Mike, after his second divorce became public knowledge, the truth and reasons spread throughout the company, and as a result, his position at work was jeopardized. This led him to decide to leave the company. He now juggles several part-time jobs to make ends meet. The sight of him living alone in a rented apartment, abandoned by his wife, beloved daughter, and the company he used to work for, evokes pity. As for me, my days are consumed by a heated job. However, coming home doesn't feel as stressful as it used to. Without the unnecessary verbal assaults or cold treatment, I can now enjoy dinner prepared with prepped ingredients, so I don't get as tired. On my days off, I sometimes dine out on a whim. I am very content with having the freedom to enjoy my time. Now that I've experienced this comfort, I often think I should have decided to divorce much earlier. Most weekends, I meet up with Jessica. We discuss recent events and especially updates about Sarah and Mike.
I believe the fact that Sarah has become a bit difficult is largely influenced by the divorce during her formative years. I definitely feel that the timing of our separation had a role in it. We need to support her more and guide her in the right direction.
Thinking about it, she's already 25, but changing one's personality and way of thinking from that age might be challenging, right?
Even so, I believe that with enough love, she will gradually change.
As if setting a new goal, Jessica clenched her fist firmly. Impressed by Jessica's words, I lifted my cup of tea, showing a faint smile. Now freed from my married life, I intend to live the rest of my life more proactively and true to myself.
Be rational in your thinking. When I came in to discuss a loan, Kevin, the bank officer, smiled smugly and stated, "We don't lend money to bottom-tier farmers." It was obvious that there was no use in continuing to argue with this individual. I let out a deep breath and shared my thoughts with him. "Fine then, I'll stop renting out my land to you." Kevin's mouth fell open, and then he started laughing. "A bank renting land from a poor individual like you. Are you even able to hear yourself?" Kevin burst out laughing. He had no idea, though, that in a few minutes he would be pale and shaking. "Nathan is my name. I am 51 years old, and I work in my hometown as a farmer. I used to work for a popular restaurant chain in the city when I was younger. However, I quit my work and went back home when my grandparents' health deteriorated. I've been cultivating veggies on my grandparents' farm for more than 20 years, doing everything at my own speed. Why I, the grandson, received my grandparents' land instead of my parents' may be a mystery to some. The explanation is straightforward. I have no parents. My parents and I used to reside in a different prefecture, but my father vanished when I was in elementary school. He simply disappeared without saying anything. We were struggling financially with just my mother remaining, so she turned to her parents, my grandparents, for help. Following that, my mother left to work, and my grandparents, who were also farmers, reared me. But when I was 10, disaster would strike this tranquil life once more. I was informed that a traffic accident had claimed the life of my mother, who worked in the city. My grandparents officially took me in after that, and the three of us shared a home. I asked if I might assist with the farm work since, even as a child, I felt bad about relying on my grandparents. What do you say? You're still a child. Children should just play and have fun. But Grandpa, I want to assist you. Growing vegetables is something that interests me as well. My grandparents finally gave in and let me to assist after I persisted in asking. They taught me everything there was to know about growing veggies, and they appeared excited every day. They were particularly delighted because I genuinely cared about vegetables, not because I was assisting. They would put me on the tractor and show me the ropes while grinning. You eat everything with such joy, even though many children don't even enjoy veggies. You're even considering cultivating them. We're so fortunate to have such a fantastic grandchild. The faces of my grandparents, who worked in the fields under the clear sky every day, were well tanned and deeply lined. Seeing the two of them, their faces crinkled with laughter as they patted my head, warmed my heart deeply. I knew how many years they'd spent under the sun and rain, taking care of me, making sure I always had warm meals and a soft bed. But even as they looked after me, I knew they cried in front of my mother's portrait after I had gone to bed. I can still remember that scene vividly. One night, I woke up to go to the bathroom and saw light coming from the room with the family altar. Peeking through the sliding door, I wondered what was happening there. I saw my grandmother, who was always so cheerful during the day, breaking down in front of my mother's photo. My grandfather sat beside her, supporting her frail frame, and gently said over and over, "At the very least, let's raise him well in her place." That was the first time I realized my grandparents too were enveloped in deep sorrow. Since then, I've tried my best to brighten their spirits, hoping to bring them some of the light my mother once did. Helping with the farm was one part of my plan, and I also made an effort to keep the house filled with laughter, saying funny things every day to make my grandparents smile. Whether because of this or not, the number of nights I heard crying from the altar room gradually decreased, and we slowly settled into a peaceful daily life together. By the time I was in high school, my grandparents began to grow frail and could no longer manage the farm on the same scale as before. So we rented out some of the farmland, drastically reducing our yield. Around then, the only crops my grandparents grew were cabbage, which required a lot of land but minimal effort, and cherry tomatoes, which could be grown abundantly on a small plot. This much we can handle on our own, so don't worry about us. Just leave this rural place and find a job that suits you. No need to be tied to farming. But after I graduate, I was thinking I'd take over the farm, intent on supporting my grandparents. I tried to convince them with all my might. Yet both of them shook their heads, encouraging me instead to go to college in the city and find a job outside of farming. "I heard from your teacher, Mr. Manning, that you're bright enough for anything. Hard times are coming for farming, with cheap vegetables being imported from overseas. That's why I want to help with the farm, to make things easier for you both." Surprisingly, it was my grandmother who reacted sternly to my words. What kind of grandparents would want to ease their burden at the expense of their grandson's future? Our happiest when you have a life filled with happiness. I was touched by her feelings, but I still couldn't bring myself to leave. I was, of course, worried about my grandparents, but part of me was also apprehensive about living on my own. Sensing my unease, my grandfather softened his expression. "Step away from farming for a while and find what you truly want to do. Study hard in the city, and if you still want to come back to farming, return here. Then you can bring us the new agricultural practices of your generation." Yeah, okay. In the end, I began studying for exams and was accepted to a prestigious university in the prefecture. I enrolled in the engineering department to study computer software. Though I'd been immersed in farming all my life, I was captivated by computers when I first used one at a friend's house in high school. So when they urged me to explore something other than farming, computers were the first thing that came to mind. After graduating, I got a job as a programmer at a large company in the city. I worked tirelessly from dawn till dusk, immersing myself in the latest, then rare computer technology and configurations. It was a fulfilling job and a new lifestyle. As I threw myself into the endless flood of information, 10 years flew by in a flash. I made it back home to my grandparents' place for New Year's and summer, but gradually, work became an excuse to visit less often. Seeing them shrink a little each year, I'd remind them to take care of their health, but I didn't truly understand the reality. It took another phone call for me to recognize my own foolishness. The shrill ring in the early morning brought back memories of that call I received as a child when I was told of my mother's death. With shaking fingers and a cold sweat on my brow, I answered the phone to hear my grandmother's tearful voice. "Your grandfather. He collapsed." Panicked, I rushed back home and went to the hospital my grandmother told me about. Apparently, my grandfather had pushed himself too hard working in the rain and had been taken in just short of pneumonia. They assured me his life wasn't in danger, but seeing him lying under those crisp, white hospital sheets, his body thin like a withered branch, filled me with grief. "Grandpa, how did it come to this?" "I'm sorry to have called so early in the morning," my grandmother said, her voice trembling. I was just so shocked, and I couldn't think straight. Sitting by his bed, my grandmother kept apologizing, her back hunched with age. When did they become so frail? All this time, I'd been living far away, out of touch with my hometown. Stunned, I resolved to move back home that very day. My grandparents tried to talk me out of it once again, but I insisted. This is my life. Let me make my own choices. If I don't come back now, I'll regret it for the rest of my life. I couldn't just abandon my company, so I informed them of my decision to resign and began the process of handing over my work. My boss, Alex, who had looked out for me since I joined, tried to persuade me to stay. But when he saw how determined I was, he gave me a knowing smile. We're really going to miss your innovative ideas here. They've been a great motivator for everyone. If you ever need anything, just give me a call. I thought he was giving me too much credit, but I was genuinely touched that he would miss me. And so, I left my corporate life behind and returned to my hometown. In the end, my grandparents were delighted, and they enjoyed our life together after so many years. Once back in the fields, I could see how much the farm had shrunk since I was in high school. We had rented out most of the unused land, but there were still large sections left untouched, with wild grass growing thickly. Seeing the ample space available, my eyes lit up. The truth was, I had been nurturing a plan in my mind ever since my years working in the city. Grandpa, would it be all right if I grew something I'm passionate about here? Do whatever you want. I plan to leave the whole farm in your hands one day, so go ahead and try things out as you like. With that, I immediately started cultivating something new: herbs. It was an unusual choice in our area, where no one paid much attention to them. Nowadays, you can find herbs at any grocery store, but back then, they were still considered a novel ingredient. I believed herbs had potential, not only for cooking, but for their fragrance and appeal as a sensory experience. Luckily, there was equipment my grandfather had used to grow cherry tomatoes in a greenhouse, so I used that to cultivate the seedlings. I began producing herbs in bulk for restaurants, while also persuading local supermarkets to create a small display for my products. Fortunately, as herbs were starting to trend, my herb farm took off better than I had expected. After a few years, my herb sales outpaced my grandparents' vegetable sales. They had grown quite old by then, and this seemed like a good opportunity for them to hand over the business entirely to me. My herb garden became well known locally, and my grandparents would beam with pride whenever neighbors praised me as such a wonderful grandson. Soon, people started requesting herbs for their home gardens, and others suggested selling bouquets made from the flowers instead of just the leaves. My herb garden turned into a neighborhood favorite. The vegetables we grew filled people's bellies, but the herbs you grow fill their hearts, my grandmother said one day, leaving me a bit flustered. Just when I thought I'd finally made my grandparents proud, they both passed away within a short time of each other. We're so happy that you've grown into such an admirable person. It was a blessing to have a grandson who brings smiles to people's faces, they had told me. Left alone, I felt a deep sadness, but I also held their parting words close to my heart. I knew that the life I had now was thanks to inheriting my grandparents' farming legacy. From that point on, I resolved to grow the farm further and make it my life's mission. With that in mind, I decided to expand the business and sought a loan from the bank. "Thank you for your time today," I said as I entered the local bank. The man handling my loan was named Kevin, and he greeted me with a friendly smile. Since I was planning to expand my grandparents' farm, I needed a significant amount of funding, so I had come to the bank hoping for a loan. "No need to be so tense. Relax," Kevin said. "Thank you. A friend recommended you, and I feel reassured seeing such a kind face," I replied, letting my genuine thoughts slip. Kevin chuckled as our conversation shifted to small talk. However, he made no effort to ask about my business plan. If this continued, I'd just be wasting time. Though I felt it might seem abrupt, I decided to steer the conversation back to business and took out my proposal. Here's my business plan. If I could start by explaining. No need. I don't see anything worth discussing. Kevin cut me off with a dismissive laugh. Feeling uneasy and wondering what was going on, I nervously asked, "Do you mean today is just an introductory meeting?" "No. I'm telling you we're not lending you money, so there's no need for pointless discussion, right?" With that, Kevin shot me an unpleasant look. Frankly, turning up to discuss a serious loan dressed in mud-stained work clothes doesn't convey any commitment. Also, that's your pickup truck in the parking lot, isn't it? Kevin pointed to the parking lot visible from the window. Sure enough, the light truck I had rushed to the bank in was parked there. I can't offer a loan to someone who drives that kind of vehicle. I apologize for my attire, I explained. I had an urgent job come up, so I came directly from the farm. I had planned to wear a suit for the meeting. However, just an hour before our appointment, a client contacted me wanting a tour of my herb farm. I'd been busy showing them around right up until it was time to head to the bank. So, rather than being late, I decided to come in my work clothes and truck. All of this effort was for one purpose: to have my business plan reviewed and secure funding from the bank. Determined to be heard, I took the proposal out once more and placed it in front of Kevin. If you just look at the details, you'd understand. I've spent years working on this plan. Please at least give it a glance. Enough already. You're too persistent. To my shock, Kevin roughly brushed my arm aside. Furthermore, he snatched the plan from my hands, tore it to shreds, and tossed it into the trash. I was stunned, left staring in disbelief at the scattered remains of my hard work. Kevin sneered in satisfaction and said, "Use some common sense. Banks only lend to clients with a clear ability to repay. We're not in the business of lending to low-level farmers." It was clear that reasoning with this man was useless. With a sigh in my heart, I told him what I'd been thinking. "All right then, I'll stop renting out my land to you." Kevin was dumbfounded for a moment, then burst into laughter. "Rent out land? What are you talking about? We're not in need of land from a poor farmer like you. You'd make a better comedian than a farmer." Laughing heartily, Kevin opened the door wide and said, "Thank you for your time today. This way to the exit." Feeling dazed and baffled, I returned to the parking lot. In fact, it was a mutual contact who had arranged this loan discussion. An old acquaintance who knew my business plan had vouched for me and said he had connections at the bank, insisting I should present my proposal. Trusting his recommendation, I came to this meeting, but it seemed Kevin had no idea I'd been introduced. Sitting back in my truck, I sighed deeply and decided to call my acquaintance. After just a few rings, he picked up. That was quick. "So, did you get the full loan?" The voice on the other end was that of my former boss, Alex. He had moved up to the role of executive director with an impressive network of connections. It was Alex who had encouraged me to try securing a loan through this local bank, saying he'd put in a good word. Unable to hide my confusion, I explained everything that had just happened. I'm afraid I was turned down. I didn't even get to discuss the loan. "What did you say?" Even over the phone, I could hear the weight in Alex's voice. After I recounted the entire incident with Kevin from start to finish, Alex let out a deep sigh. "It seems there was a misunderstanding at the bank. Please wait there. I'll sort this out right now." Since this was Alex, someone who had always been there for me, I couldn't refuse his request. Though I wanted to get back to my herb farm, I decided to wait a bit longer out of respect for him. Then, just 10 minutes later, an elderly man came rushing out of the bank, looking flustered. "Nathan, please wait. I beg you to give us another chance to discuss this." The man, pale and breathless, introduced himself as Watson, the bank's president. Bowing deeply, he said, "I received a call from Alex earlier and finally learned the situation. This is entirely due to my lack of oversight, and I have no words to express my apology. Please raise your head. It sounds like you're saying the loan is out of reach anyway. In response to my answer, Mr. Watson shook his head vigorously from side to side. At that moment, Kevin appeared, following closely behind him. Mr. Watson, is everything all right? You left so suddenly I was worried. All right? How could it be? Do you have any idea who this man is? Mr. Watson snapped at Kevin, his eyes blazing with anger. But Kevin, with a misplaced grin, began to say something unbelievable. So, still loitering around, I see. Figured you'd stick around just to cause a scene in the parking lot. Kevin cast a scornful look my way, then turned to Mr. Watson with a forced smile. I'll escort this lowlife out immediately. I wouldn't want him to cause you any trouble, so please go back inside. Kevin, you really didn't listen to a word, did you? This man is no lowlife, and changing your attitude based on a client's appearance is utterly unacceptable. As Mr. Watson's anger grew, Kevin stood there wide-eyed and gaping in shock. As soon as Kevin realized that Mr. Watson's anger was directed at him, his composure began to crumble. But what's the big deal about this, farmer? I don't understand why you're so upset, Mr. Watson. This man, Nathan, came to us as a referral from Alex, the executive of Wells Corporation, one of our bank's most important clients. Hearing this, Kevin's face turned pale, and he began to tremble. Alex, a member of the family that owned my previous company, was poised to become the next president, and Wells Corporation had a long-standing relationship with this bank. That was why Alex went out of his way to introduce me. I informed you, Kevin, that Nathan would be coming in today to discuss a loan. So why on earth did you deny his application without even reviewing it? Well, He seemed to finally grasp the seriousness of the situation. Kevin turned pale, starting to shake uncontrollably. Watching him look back and forth between me and Mr. Watson with a frightened expression, I thought he might simply apologize. Sure, he had treated me poorly earlier, but after all, I was a potential loan client introduced by Alex. I wanted to handle this as smoothly as possible. However, Kevin didn't seem to feel the same way. His pride seemed to get in the way, and he glared at me resentfully, muttering complaints under his breath. I apologize for the disrespect, but excuse me for saying this. This man arrived in a pickup truck. Kevin's response left me, and even Mr. Watson, stunned in disbelief. Even after all that had been said, he still had the audacity to argue further. Yet, seeing our shocked silence, Kevin seemed to think he'd made his point. He regained a bit of his color, and, with great effort, began explaining his view, spitting out his words with enthusiasm. No matter who recommends who, if they lack the ability to repay, a bank can't grant a loan. That's what I concluded. Kevin pointed at my muddy work clothes and then at the pickup truck outside, continuing with pride. Even with a big client backing him, if he's just a poor farmer, we can't lend to him. In fact, lending just because he's a client's friend would actually mean changing our standards based on the person. So that's how you evaluated him? Mr. Watson's quiet voice interrupted Kevin's rant. The sudden calmness in Mr. Watson's tone took Kevin by surprise, leaving him speechless. But as bankers, it's our job to thoroughly understand our clients' backgrounds. I thought I taught you that, Kevin. That's exactly what I did. I judged Nathan based on his clothes and his vehicle. Kevin's persistence finally snapped Mr. Watson's patience. Don't be ridiculous. Anyone working at this bank should know who this man is. Nathan is the owner of a vast amount of land, including the very land on which our bank sits. Land? You mean he was serious about that? Kevin's jaw dropped, and he stared at me, visibly shaken, as if he might collapse from the shock. Watching his ridiculous reaction, I struggled to hold back laughter. When my grandfather scaled back his farming operations, a large amount of vacant land opened up. Not wanting to let the land go to waste, he rented it out to various parties, with the bank becoming his biggest tenant. This entire area, from the main road to the parking lot, was land my grandfather had leased to the bank. I had inherited that property and continued the lease. Although I'd sold much of the other land to cover inheritance taxes, I still owned the area around the bank. That was precisely why Mr. Watson was scolding Kevin with such fury. Sure, Alex's referral was significant. But more than that, this bank has been indebted to his family's land for generations. And you had the nerve to speak so disrespectfully to Nathan. I didn't know. If I had been informed, I would never have said anything about his truck. Scrambling for an excuse, Kevin shifted the blame to me, as if it were my fault for not telling him sooner. Utterly exasperated, I finally spoke up. I included all of that information in my business plan, yet it was Kevin who tore it up without even looking at it. You tore up a client's documents. Apparently, he hadn't heard that part, and Mr. Watson's anger flared even more. Facing Mr. Watson, who looked furious enough to have steam coming from his head, Kevin turned pale, shrinking in on himself, barely able to breathe. I would never do such a thing. Nathan must be mistaken. There's no proof that I did that. There is proof. The person who called out to us was a young bank clerk. In his hand was the trash can where Kevin had thrown the documents earlier. Inside the trash can, as expected, lay the torn remains of my business proposal. I was surprised that the meeting ended so quickly, so I thought I'd start tidying up the room. That's when I found these important documents discarded, so I brought them here. Mind your own business. In a sudden fit of anger, Kevin lunged toward the young clerk. But just in time, Mr. Watson grabbed Kevin's arm, firmly restraining him. That's enough. Stop this disgraceful behavior, Kevin. I'll decide on the consequences later. For now, go home and await further instructions. Mr. Watson, please believe me. I was only doing my job, diligently working to maximize the bank's profits. Kevin's desperate attempts at an excuse only highlighted his prejudice and misguided efforts. Other staff and security personnel had gathered and began to escort Kevin out of the building. Yet, he managed to shoot me a resentful glare. No matter how much land you inherited or how many connections you have, you're nothing special. Loan or no loan, your farm will fail, and that's a fact. There's no need to worry. My herb farm is growing its revenue steadily. When I answered calmly, Kevin gasped sharply, his voice catching as he tried to respond. Herb farm. Nathan, you mean the one recognized as a regional revitalization model, backed by the local government, and highly sought after by city restaurants and local supermarkets. Oh, you knew? Then you should have looked at my business proposal. If he'd simply read the documents instead of making snap judgments, he would have seen who I really was. I hadn't applied for the loan out of financial desperation. In fact, it was quite the opposite. I was planning an expansion to establish a new high-altitude farm in a neighboring county to support seasonal and variety growth. As Kevin had unwittingly mentioned, my current herb farm was thriving. With this success, I intended to diversify my offerings and spread out production across the year. Given the scope of my plans, I could easily have approached a large urban bank. But my loyalty to the local bank, which had served my grandparents, led me to prioritize them, especially with Alex's recommendation. However, if the loan officer had this much animosity toward me, there was nothing more to be done. I'll consider other banks that may be more suitable, I said, turning to leave. No, please wait, Nathan. Mr. Watson, desperate to salvage the situation, ignored Kevin, who now stood stunned, and pleaded with me. Although Watson wasn't directly responsible for the conflict, the training of his staff was ultimately his duty. Kevin had judged me solely by my appearance, dismissing me as poor and unworthy despite my family's connection to the bank and Alex's recommendation. I could no longer trust a bank that employed people like him. Without paying any attention to Mr. Watson, I got into the truck and quietly pressed down on the accelerator. As I glanced in the rearview mirror, I saw Kevin's expression, a mixture of anger and despair, as he crumpled to the ground. Before long, he disappeared from sight. In the end, the local bank ultimately went under. Apparently, as I left, a group of high school girls had overheard my parting words. "Hey, did you hear that? I think this bank might be in trouble." "Really? Does that mean it might go under? We should take out our savings right away." Although it was simply a misunderstanding, the phrase "the bank is in trouble" spread rapidly through friends, family, and workplace gossip. The rumor took on a life of its own. As a result, countless people who had no idea where the rumors originated started to believe the bank was in financial trouble, and they all rushed to the bank's counter to withdraw their savings. Because of this, withdrawals surged. Within just a few days, approximately $2 billion was withdrawn, causing the bank, originally with no issues, to go under. Most of the bank staff, including Watson, managed to find new jobs. But no one was willing to hire Kevin. Rumors spread that Kevin's behavior had led to the bank's downfall, earning him the nickname Kevin the Bank Breaker. Eventually, Kevin disappeared from town altogether. Some say he was sued for damages for blocking my business deal, or that he borrowed from predatory lenders to make ends meet. But one thing is certain, I'll never see Kevin's face again. As for me, I secured funding from another bank shortly after. I am now expanding a new herb farm in the highlands of the neighboring county. My business continues to thrive, and the farm's serene green setting has become popular with visitors seeking a peaceful retreat. We even opened a restaurant on-site, serving fresh herbs and vegetables harvested from our fields. Nowadays, people visit not just for the herbs, but to enjoy our dishes. We offer an array of products like herb bouquets, cookies, cakes, and herbal teas. Families come with their kids on weekends, and the farm is always alive with greenery and smiles. Watching this scene, I speak to my grandparents in my heart. "Grandpa, you always loved seeing me bring smiles to others. I'll keep working hard to be a grandson you can be proud of. Please keep watching over me." As I looked up at the clear blue sky, a gentle breeze swept through, softly rustling the herbs as if responding to me. I'm Jack, a 32-year-old corporate employee. I work for a large trading corporation in the sales department. I don't want to boast, but I've consistently had the best sales performance. I think that's largely due to my competitive mentality. I became aware of my talent when I started working. I'm once again at the top of the sales pack this month. I closed my computer screen after letting out a sigh of satisfaction that everything was proceeding according to plan. Every day is the same for me. The best prize is that significant alterations to my everyday routine simply don't appeal to me. Only relaxed people, I believe, can achieve that. Some people say, "I need some excitement." I feel bad for them. They don't recognize the importance of daily existence. Then, however, someone showed up who disturbed my pattern. Lucy, a younger female manager, was transferred to our department in April of last spring. She was my direct superior because of her title as assistant sales manager. I have always had trouble with women in general, but it's not like I have a grudge against her. This is for a reason. My mom fled the house, leaving my dad and me alone. Don't get me wrong, my dad wasn't violent or had a drinking issue whatsoever. Instead, Dad was frequently ill, and my mother was the one who looked after him. I'm not sure if she grew weary of taking care of him. As a middle schooler, she left a note and left when I got home. "Take care of your dad for me." My mother's letter contained only that information. I recall being more awed by it than by loneliness or melancholy. I felt angry at my mother and found it difficult to control it. Dad accepted Mom's departure as if it were the most natural thing in the world and never placed blame on her. Thus, my dad and I were the only ones beginning our lives together. Dad needed government help because he was unable to work. I committed myself to helping my dad and our family by taking part-time jobs after high school. I had no time to enjoy being a normal young person. I learned to put up a brave front no matter what, because I never wanted sympathy from anyone. I suppose I must have been a rough kid. Unfortunately, Dad died 2 years ago, following a protracted illness. I didn't know what to do after I was released from taking care of my dad. I thought I was no longer valuable. Probably as a result of my dad's passing, I became more involved in my profession. I think this is when Lucy, who had been assigned in April, first talked to me. "You're always top in sales, Jack," she said. I made the effort, even though it felt dull and like she was making small conversation. That's all. Although most people accept that reaction, I didn't try to come across as modest. Of course, it would be difficult to achieve such results otherwise. Lucy remarked that while nodding in agreement in front of the sales performance that was shown on the whiteboard. I can smell the lovely perfume she wears every time she nods. She patted my shoulder lightly and said, "Let's do our best this week too," before returning to her desk. Her left ring finger has a silver band on it. When I discovered she was married, I was a little surprised. In addition to being younger than I am, she doesn't seem married. Not so homely. That's how I felt. I found out the reason for this purely by chance. Every office has its share of gossip mongers, and ours was no exception, with many relishing in the rumors during their breaks. Today, one of the clerks was proudly sharing some juicy news she had overheard in the break room, and I just happened to overhear it. According to the office clerk, it seems that Lucy's husband passed away due to illness the year before last. This means she is a widow now. I heard it all happen so fast, from the time the illness was discovered to his passing. Hearing that, I stepped away from the break room. It was a bit surprising to think that someone as cheerful as Lucy had such a past. But then another thought crossed my mind. Why didn't she leave her husband? I wondered. Was it because his decline was so rapid, from treatment to demise? I believed that if her husband had struggled for a long time and had not died, Lucy would have left him. I know it's a biased thought, but this is something I know from my experience, and I believe it's the truth. What's wrong? Your coffee is going to get cold. Lost in these thoughts, I completely forgot to sip my coffee. By the time Lucy, who was next to me, pointed it out, I hardly took a sip, but it was already lukewarm. "I'm sorry, I was spacing out a bit." Apologizing for being lost in thought during work, Lucy looked at me puzzled. Then, the next moment, she smiled brightly. "Don't be silly. Everyone needs a break. No need to apologize." Her smile seemed dazzling to me. It was a wonder how she could smile like a sunflower blooming in summer. I awkwardly smiled back, but it probably looked like a ventriloquist dummy smiling. Don't force a smile. Save those smiles for the customers. After she jokingly said that, I covered my mouth with one hand, feeling as if everything was being seen through. I felt restless and uncomfortable. I'm sorry, I'm not good at smiling unintentionally. My true feelings slipped out. I had never said such a thing to anyone before. I was surprised at myself for revealing my true feelings to Lucy. Oh, is that so? For me, I find it hard to cry. Lucy gently brushed aside my true feelings and said so, as if we were exchanging our vulnerabilities. Maybe she was trying to be fair since she had inadvertently heard my weakness. In all things, Lucy was always like this. She treats everyone equally, lends a listening ear, gives encouragement, and brightens the atmosphere in our department by bringing everyone together. Lucy's reputation has soared, not just within our team, but across the whole department. By the time I saw her smile every morning, it had become the highlight of my day. Something unbelievable happened to me at the end of the month. I was left standing before the posted sales results. For the first time, I was in second place in sales performance. I couldn't hide my dismay, wondering if there had been some kind of mistake. The one who surpassed me and jumped to the top was a junior who had been hovering around the middle of the pack until last month. I had noticed they'd been putting in the effort after receiving advice from Lucy recently. but I never, not in a million years, thought they would surpass my sales performance. As I heard the cheers of my junior behind me, I kept telling myself to stay calm. Losing my composure was not an option. I must keep a straight face so as not to be caught off guard. The nails of my tightly clenched fist were digging into my palm. The one who gently wrapped around that fist was Lucy's slender finger, a fleeting moment as she passed by. Her fingertips seemed to soothe me, as if to say, "It's okay." Involuntarily, I looked up. Without looking back at me, Lucy walked straight toward my junior and congratulated him. The touch of her fingers lingered on my fist. It felt as if her feelings were flowing into me through her fingertips, a strange sensation. The tension of my clenched fist gradually eased. I could feel my strained emotions lightening. "I won't lose next month." I conveyed my genuine feelings to my junior. The words came out naturally, probably thanks to Lucy. Lucy looked at me and smiled brightly. It was her usual radiant smile, like a sunflower. After work that day, we finally had Lucy's welcome party within our team. The team's party planner had booked a stylish Spanish restaurant. Our team always had high attendance at these parties, thanks to his efforts to find various interesting places for every gathering. This time, too, almost everyone was attending. We enjoyed exotic dishes and delicious wine. Under normal circumstances, I'd probably enjoy myself more, but I was a bit different tonight. I couldn't stand the fact that my sales performance was surpassed by a junior colleague. The supposed relief I felt was stirred awkwardly again by drinking alcohol. This feeling of irritation shrouded my chest and invited a worse state of drunkenness. I'm definitely not a bad drunk. I'm always properly paced, and getting disorderly is unthinkable. But tonight was different. I couldn't disguise my emotions and overtly avoided Lucy. "Please drink over there, don't mind me." "Don't worry, I'll work harder from next month." I confronted Lucy, who had just sat next to me, and started talking with slurred words. "Come on, don't dislike me that much," Lucy said, trying to calm me down. She seemed to act superior, even though she's younger, and it irritated me even more. "How did you even get promoted?" "There's no way you can get promoted while taking care of a sick hand, can you?" My mouth wouldn't stop in my drunken state. I know I'm in trouble in my head, but harsh words just keep spilling out of my mouth. "Oh, you seem to know a lot." "I'm a more capable woman than you think." "Jack." Lucy brushed off my sarcasm with a complacent attitude. Even that attitude started to anger me. "Jack, you struggle with women, don't you?" she said with a mischievous grin, making my heart race, and I unintentionally got lost for words. "See? Bullseye. Spot on, right?" she continued. "That's why, whatever you say, Jack, it's fine by me." Taking a sip of red wine, Lucy said it with a straight face. This is her true feeling, I thought. It's like she thinks she knows everything about me. "What do you know about me, being younger and all?" I found myself getting defensive. The room's atmosphere suddenly turned icy. It seems my voice was louder than I thought. "I do know." "Too bad you don't like me, do you, Jack?" she said, sticking out her tongue in a teasing manner. Lucy seemed to provoke me. I, irritated, unintentionally stood up from my chair. Lucy looked up at me with challenging eyes. "I never said such a thing," she said. "I can tell, even if you don't say it," I replied. She pouted her lips, somehow looking a bit sullen. After a few similar exchanges, I was the one who lost my cool first. I drank the wine I had in my hand in one go and leaned toward Lucy, shouting, "That's what I'm saying, I like you." In that moment, Lucy, with wide-open eyes, looked up at me. Being able to surprise her, I felt satisfied. In the next moment, I blacked out. The next day, I woke up in my room with a hand holding my aching head. I was so embarrassed about making a fool of myself at the party that I wished the ground would swallow me up. Alone, I tossed and turned in bed. "You're awake, huh?" What I heard from the kitchen was Lucy's voice, and I was so startled. It felt like my heart might jump out of my mouth. Jack, you passed out after that. Tom and I brought you back. We missed the last train, so we had to impose. Approaching with a bottle of mineral water in one hand, Lucy looked somewhat refreshing without makeup. I'm so sorry. While accepting the bottle of mineral water, I apologized for my disgraceful behavior last night. Lucy smiled warmly and said, "It's all right." Oh, but I also have something to apologize for. What is it? I asked, looking at her. Lucy, looking a bit guilty, clasped her hands together toward me. What on earth could she have done to me? I thought. If it's about what happened at the party, I really don't remember anything. I fought to turn off the TV, but it was left on, and then a DVD started playing. I saw cute Jack. She sticks out her tongue and says, "I'm sorry." I glanced toward the TV on the table in front of me. An old DVD case was carelessly left there. Recalling what was being watched, I felt embarrassed knowing that Lucy had seen such a thing. I really wished I could just find a hole and hide in it. You saw it, huh? I said, "Feel free to laugh." A grown man doing something like that, I uttered in despair. Why? She asked. I think it's wonderful. Remembering and valuing family is a wonderful thing, isn't it? I managed a wry smile as she asked me this, her face filled with curiosity. What Lucy happened to see was a home video taken when I was a child. It documented a time when I was most happy. My dad was still somewhat well, my mom was at home, and I was laughing innocently, oblivious to any hardships. This was filmed during a family outing to watch the blooming flowers, and my grandfather was the one shooting the video. He probably offered to handle the camera so that the 3 family members could be framed in the shot. I was so young, adoring my parents, not having the slightest inkling that this happiness would crumble. Sometimes, I watched this video to remind myself that I, too, had happy moments. Not to forget that I was once like others, a person who was loved. This wonderful family fell apart a few years later. I felt the urge to tell Lucy everything then. About my father's illness, my mom running away, how I couldn't forgive myself, how I felt relieved more than sad when my father passed away. Normally, I'm good at putting on a facade, but with Lucy, only honest words come out. She was quietly listening to my life story. After finishing telling everything, I took a sip of mineral water. No wonder you despise women. Lucy quietly opened her mouth after listening to my life story. Lucy showed neither signs of pity nor ridicule. Her face accepted all the facts as they were. Can I share my story too? When my husband died, I felt relieved. At her unexpected confession, I inadvertently let out a breath. It was really hard until he passed, knowing the end was near, but having no other choice. I don't know how much I cursed God. Lucy smiled a bit sarcastically. That smile was twisted, totally different from her usual cheerful one. I wondered which one was the real her. I wanted to know more about her. Did you feel relieved when your husband passed away? I asked. I was aware that it was an insensitive question, but I wanted to confirm it with her. Yes, I did. I felt liberated, Lucy clarified. The liberation she felt was not from taking care of him. She seemed to think she was liberated from the fear of her husband being gone and the pity from those around her. Her husband's final moments weren't peaceful. It seems he suffered in pain until the end, crying out his desire to live. Lucy described his last moments as hellish. It was too much to face directly. I wanted to run away from there, to block my ears from hearing the prolonged beep of the heart monitor. She realized it was over. It was an insane moment. Ruminating, she broke down slightly. I couldn't start a family with him. I couldn't let him, who loved children, become a father, she concluded her story. I felt as if I had learned a secret hidden within her. Maybe she didn't ridicule me because she had experienced significant loss. Loss teaches you things, something Lucy knows firsthand. I wanted to say something comforting, but no words came to my mind. "See you on Monday, then." Lucy left after saying this. After she left, I got out of bed to check the kitchen and found a pot of easy-to-digest vegetable soup on the table. There was a note: "Heat it up and eat." The refrigerator was stocked with sports drinks. Lucy's thoughtfulness, her affection, was appreciated. From this day on, Lucy's presence in my life grew increasingly significant. I found myself hoping that she felt the same. However, when I went to work on Monday, her attitude was no different than usual. I was taken aback, thinking we had a special connection, sharing secrets no one else knew. But no, it was just boss and subordinate. Nothing more, nothing less. Such a relationship continued until the next spring. It was almost a year since Lucy was transferred. When spring came, and the cherry blossoms were in full bloom, I felt lighthearted. Every year, perhaps my body remembers the joyful times. Sunday was the anniversary of my father's passing, so I went to visit his grave. I cleaned it neatly and offered fresh flowers, a candle, and a cigarette, his favorite, together. I remember my father sneaking cigarettes despite doctors' warnings. He would laugh while smoking in his sick bed, saying, "This is the one thing I can't give up." Thinking back, he might have been a strange father. I wonder what kind of life he would have led if he hadn't been sick. I watched the smoke from the candle and cigarette rise into the air, imagining his life. Usually, I would feel more depressed visiting this grave, but not this time. The lake inside my heart was still. I felt very flat, quiet, and calm. I think it was the first time I prayed with such feelings. I realized something is changing within me. My obsession with being the top in sales has relaxed, fluctuating between first and third place. I'm no longer disturbed by it. I'm even surprised at myself for being able to sincerely rejoice at my junior's growth and colleagues' efforts. She has undoubtedly changed me. Lucy's presence has changed me. I haven't told her, but I'm truly grateful to her from the bottom of my heart. Later, that confession video shown to me by a colleague at a drinking party is now a funny story. "Huh, Jack. No way. Don't you think this is too much of a coincidence?" Suddenly, a voice called out, and when I turned around, there was Lucy. She is holding flowers for the offering. "Huck, Lucy, is your family's grave here too?" Lucy shared that it's her husband's monthly Memorial Day. Somehow, I find myself helping out with the cleaning. Lucy carefully polishes the tombstone, offers a candle, and lights a cigarette, just like I do. My dad was the same. Cigarettes, I mention. Lucy smiles and says, "Really?" Such selfish people, really. Despite being sick, as she lights a per-second cigarette. They can smoke all they want in the afterlife, she says, laughing freely. Lucy looks up at the smoke rising to the sky and murmurs something to that effect. Her profile looks so bright and cheerful. Perhaps Lucy has also managed to sort out her feelings. Jack, ready to head back. Fania walked together, returning the ladle and bucket to the fountain and the precincts. Lucy invites me for a walk. "It's a beautiful day. A walk sounds nice," I respond. Lucy guided me to a park near a temple known for its beautiful cherry blossoms. The fully bloomed cherry blossoms were visible even from afar. There were many people enjoying the cherry blossoms, and with stalls set up, it had a festive atmosphere. I narrowed my eyes at the familiar place, feeling a sense of nostalgia. "You remembered?" I mumbled inadvertently. I would never forget. I decided that day that we would come here together when the flowers bloomed, Lucy says, while looking at the cherry blossoms. While slowly walking among the blossoms, I steal glances at her profile. Seemingly noticing my gaze, our eyes suddenly meet, causing me to involuntarily stop in my tracks. I can't stand it anymore. "I hate waiting," she suddenly says, puffing out her cheeks and stamping her foot. Faced with her childlike behavior, I find myself feeling flustered. What upset her? "I'm sorry. I apologize. I say, just in case, and the words of apology spill out. Seeing me like this, Lucy puffs her cheeks again. Really? You're hopeless, she says. Can I accept that confession? You did say you liked me at the bar, right? At the sudden confession, I inadvertently nod in agreement. I don't want to be your lover. I want to be your family, Jack. I want you to be a part of my family, Lucy says with a serious expression. I think ideally, I, as the man, should have said it first. I feel really bad for not having the courage. But Lucy had decided to confess to me in this park during the cherry blossom season. Are you sure about me? I'm not a good guy. I want you to cherish your wonderful family. That's why I want you, Jack, she says, hugging me tightly like a child. Her body is soft and slim, and I can smell her usual perfume. I'm sorry. Let me say it too. Please be my family, I say. At my words, Lucy tightens her arms around me. This must be her way of responding. We both carry a great sense of loss. Knowing this, I think we can cherish each other. I'll cherish you for a lifetime, I said with all my feelings. I'm sure there's no one else in the world to whom I would dedicate these words besides her. How did you find today's story? Hitting the subscribe and like button will motivate me to create more. I'm also looking forward to reading your comments. See you in the next video. Hemph. Are you even aware that you depend on us for your life? A small, weak factory like yours will fail if our company wins the contract. You pawn, just follow my instructions and don't say anything. An employee of the client was requesting that we reduce the cost of our screws. However, I'm proud that our screws are worth the money. I cannot simply drop the price without thinking. I firmly stated, we cannot do that, no matter how much you insist. The person in charge got up and doused me with a hot cup of coffee after I said that. Splat. Oh. I had to let out a cry. It was a rather loud yell, I believe. My skin was already excruciatingly sore and bright red by the time I felt the heat. You small gear in a weak subcontractor's wheel. Who do you think you are? Cut the price of this dreck of a product in half if you don't want us to cancel the contract. Do you understand? My blood ran cold when I heard those words. Does their business work like this? That person in control was doomed to plunge into a chasm after this. Aaron is my name. I'm 35 years old already. This 35-year-old man works in a factory in a small town. Hi, Dad. Today, I'm speaking with the client. Do you have something to say? Just do it like you always do, okay. I got it. Don't call me Dad either. I got a severe glare from the man in front of me. I made a fast correction. I apologize, Mr. Martin. The proprietor of the small-town factory, my dad, returned to the workshop after apparently accepting my correction. Yes, my family owns the tiny plant where I work. We manufacture screws in our facility, including small screws for precise equipment, screws for machinery, and screws for desks and chairs. Despite being a small-town factory, we have secured some rather large jobs. But as usual, it's up to me to handle the clients. At his core, my dad is a true craftsman. His pride is equally as high as his technical prowess. He is awful at negotiating because of his obstinate nature. I am therefore in charge of all client meetings and negotiations. It will only escalate into a fight if Dad leaves. I sighed as I got ready to see the client today. This encounter was with a significant machinery-related company, one of our most valued clients. The biggest trading company we work with among them. Their location in a high-rise structure is very different from our small operation. I walked nervously into the huge lobby. Even after all these visits, I still get anxious. These commercial conversations are still new to me. Nevertheless, I made sure to iron out the wrinkles in the black suit I've gradually been used to before entering the business. Even though my legs were a little unsteady, I approached the receptionist with a strong sense of resolve. I was aware that the individual I was meeting today was the only employee in this organization with that last name. Pardon me. From Martin Factory, I'm Aaron Martin. Is Isaac free? Yes, Mr. Martin, we have been anticipating your arrival. Regarding today, the receptionist looked at me pityingly. Wait, is the meeting not today? I tilted my head anxiously, feeling a bit uneasy. But her response was different from what I expected. Actually, Isaac, the person in charge, is out on a business trip today. Someone else is filling in just for today. You weren't informed. Oh, I see. No, I didn't receive any notice. My sincerest apologies. It was an oversight on our part. No, it's perfectly fine. Don't worry about it. I'm truly sorry. I'll call the person in charge immediately. Please wait over there. The receptionist deeply bowed and directed me to a nearby sofa. With a sigh, I sat down. I wondered what kind of person would show up. Isaac, the usual person in charge, is a friendly and approachable guy. He always listens carefully to my clumsy explanations and tries to work things out with me. This company, from the receptionist to everyone else, is full of great people. I bet the new person will be just as nice. All right, let's do this, I said to myself, pumping my fists to psych myself up. Despite my nervousness, I waited expectantly for the new person in charge. Then, a man appeared at the reception desk from the back. After talking briefly with the receptionist, he turned toward me. As soon as I saw his face, an unexplainable feeling of discomfort arose in my chest. Why do I feel this way? The man walked closer. His slightly creepy smile made my skin crawl. As his face came closer, my brain started sounding alarms. I dumped through my memories. It was a face I never wanted to remember. So, it really is you, Aaron. Wait, is that Noel? Before I knew it, I had spoken my thoughts out loud. The man in front of me was Noel. Unbelievably, he was my old classmate. Didn't expect to see you here, of all places. The son of some weak little factory, Noel said, his words making my blood boil. Yeah, well, I didn't expect to see you either. Weren't you off in Tokyo? I snapped back a bit harder than I intended. But Noel didn't seem to care. He scanned me from head to toe with an obnoxiously appraising gaze. What's with you? It was an unpleasant gaze. It felt like I was being appraised, and that attitude was blatantly on display with no attempt to hide it. Wow, that suit really doesn't suit you. Why don't you stick to wearing dirty overalls like a good little factory worker? Excuse me. Careful now. Are you sure it's a good idea to talk back to your client? Me? Client. You're the one in charge? That's right. And I'm your client. Come on, the meeting room is this way. Bet a poor guy like you doesn't get to walk around buildings this fancy very often. Actually, I've been here plenty of times and know where the meeting room is. Oh sure, like you'd remember. Just don't go stealing anything, you pauper. I wouldn't steal anything. I couldn't hold back my anger and ended up raising my voice. But as it echoed through the floor, I caught sight of the receptionist looking at me with concern. Embarrassed, I quickly shut my mouth. Don't shout, it's embarrassing. That's because you keep saying ridiculous things. I blushed furiously. I followed Noah and gave a slight nod to the receptionist as a small gesture of apology. Why does it have to be him? Oh, just my bad luck. I sighed as I looked at Noah's back. It was a sigh with a completely different meaning this time. I genuinely thought, I really can't stand this guy. Noah, as I mentioned, was my classmate back in school. He graduated from Tokyo University, so he's undoubtedly smart. But his personality, let's just say, it leaves much to be desired. It would have been one thing if he only bragged about himself, but he had no problem making degrading remarks about others. I was one of his targets, too. My family's factory had been well known in our town since I was a kid. It's a small screw factory run by our family, producing screws for all kinds of uses, even tiny rare ones. In a tight-knit rural community like ours, everyone knew about our long-standing business, but Noah always made a mockery of it. "Ha, look at you, poor boy. Poor kids always wear dirty overalls and sweat buckets. Disgusting. You're covered in oil. Don't come near me," Noah would say without a second thought. Back then, we were just kids, so I've come to accept it as something inevitable. My dad really was the kind of person who lived for his work. He worked so much that he rarely interacted with people, which often led to misunderstandings. On the rare occasion he stepped out, the townspeople would often see him in his worn, oil-stained overalls. Now that I'm an adult, I sometimes wish my dad had paid more attention to his appearance back then. But the Noah in front of me didn't seem much different from the Noah of those childhood days. "I can't believe you're actually working at a factory. It's filthy, smelly. Oh wait, poor people don't get to be picky about jobs, right? Guess you had no choice. Huh?" Noah laughed mockingly. I gritted my teeth, determined not to raise my voice again. I never imagined that as adults, I'd once again be on the receiving end of Noah's mockery. With these thoughts swirling in my mind, we finally arrived at the meeting room. It was a large room, and Noah and I sat across from each other. Noah, sort of casually, used the coffee machine in the meeting room to make 2 cups of coffee. "Since I feel sorry for a poor guy like you, I'll at least brew you some decent coffee," Noel said. He placed a steaming cup of coffee in a paper cup in front of me. I gave him a slight nod and politely thanked him. "Thanks. Poor guys like you don't get to drink coffee very often, do you?" Noel's words stung. Patience, patience, I kept telling myself, looking into the coffee. I saw my own tense, scowling face reflected back at me. All right, let's switch gears. I'm here for work after all." I exhaled deeply, trying to reset my thoughts. Then, I showed Noah the materials I had prepared. As I'm sure Isaac mentioned, today we'll be going over this and this carefully. I laid out the documents in front of him. This was, after all, work. I reminded myself that I needed to stay professional and use polite language no matter what. I shifted my tone, trying to remain professional. However, Noah gave the documents a quick glance before leaning back in his chair. He stretched and cracked his neck as if completely uninterested. He showed no sign of actually listening to me. I leaned forward and looked at his face. Are you listening to me?" Yeah, I don't need all that." Noah cut me off mid-sentence. Noah wasn't just cutting me off. It was more like he completely shut down the conversation. Does this guy even have any intention of having a discussion? Wait, what? I came here today specifically to discuss this with you, as agreed with Isaac. If it's about that, talk to Isaac. I'm here to discuss something else with you. Wait, what? Didn't Isaac brief you? I'm here to go over these points. I pushed the documents closer to him. No, that doesn't concern me. What? I couldn't help but respond with the same kind of answer. My head was swimming with questions. Today's meeting was supposed to focus on discussing the safety of our screws and how to promote them moving forward. This was something I had agreed to finalize with Isaac during our last conversation. What else is there to discuss? Everything is mostly settled. We just need to finalize these details. There's still something not settled. Okay, but that's not something else. Bang. Noah slammed his hand on the table in frustration. I froze, startled by the sudden noise. Seeing my reaction, Noah seemed satisfied and smirked at me mockingly. You don't get it, do you? These screws are overpriced. Overpriced? Yeah, don't you know the market rates for screws? Yours cost twice as much. That's because you can't even do basic math, huh? Poor boy, or are you just desperate to scrape by? I discussed the price thoroughly with Isaac, and we agreed that it's fair for these screws. No, you're not listening. I'm telling you the price is way off the market. I can't change the price. This price was set after multiple discussions with Isaac. It's not something I can change now. Just tell them you renegotiated with me and lowered it. Drop the price. Noah pulled a pen from his chest pocket and scribbled a number on the documents I had brought. This seems about right. What? That's less than half the current price. That's what the market rate is for screws. These screws are the result of hard work from my dad and me. Yeah, spare me the heartwarming father-son tale. The real world isn't so kind. Just lower the price already. Noah kept repeating, lower the price, like a broken record. This product is... I tried to bring up the topic of the screws again, but Noah made it clear with exaggerated gestures that he had no intention of listening to me. He glared at me lazily, his disinterest evident. But I refused to back down and glared right back at him. Let me make this clear one more time. These screws are overpriced. Lower the price. No, we're sticking with this price, I spoke firmly to Noah. The moment he heard my words, he gave a sly grin. A bad feeling crept over me, and then, splash! Ah, it's hot. I instinctively clutched my arm. Brown liquid dripped from the table onto the floor in steady drops. I must have shouted quite loudly. I couldn't help but cry out. Noah had poured the steaming coffee in front of him all over me. Reflexively, I moved my body to shield my face, but my arm took the brunt of it. The pain was intense. Hot coffee seeped through my suit sleeve and burned my skin. My arm turned bright red, looking painfully raw. Does anyone normal go this far? I glared at Noah, but he didn't look the least bit remorseful. He just smiled, watching me as if enjoying a show. He didn't even try to wipe up the spilled coffee or show concern for my arm. If anything, he looked proud of himself, like a child savoring the satisfaction of pulling off a prank. Ha, you know your little factory survives because of us, right? If we cancel our contract, your weak little factory will go under in no time. Just do what I tell you. Pawn. Stop talking back. Ha ha ha. He let out a laugh straight out of a cartoon villain. It was a laugh so loud, it made my stomach churn. But I refused to back down and glared at him. No matter how much you demand, we cannot lower the price. Huh, really? Okay, fine then. We'll just cancel the contract. Hope you don't mind your company going under. Throwing hot coffee at a business partner is way worse than canceling a contract. You think a big company like ours is going to back down before a subcontractor? Be realistic. You should be begging us to buy your junk products, even at a discount. Junk? I replayed Noel's words in my mind. The screws my dad and I worked so hard to create were junk. I felt my blood run cold. Anger and a strange calmness mixed within me as I slowly stood up. So, this is how your company operates, is it? I didn't even bother looking at Noah anymore. I couldn't stand to see his face a second longer. Without another word, I walked out of the meeting room. I cradled my burned arm, but Noel's words had numbed the pain. The rage that had been boiling inside me had been replaced by a chilling calm. I realized there was no point in arguing with someone like him. He wasn't worth my time. I left the building. As I walked out, I noticed the receptionist trying to speak to me, but I pretended not to see her and kept going. When I got home, the anger I had suppressed earlier surged back. I told my dad and Mom everything that had happened that day. My dad simply listened and then headed to the workshop without saying a word. Seeing him walk away made me feel even more frustrated. I wanted him to say something. Maybe I wanted him to declare that we'd stop doing business with them entirely. My mom, on the other hand, frowned thoughtfully. Ike worked so hard to handle things properly, and yet they sent someone like that as a substitute for the original person in charge. Ike had always taken our screws seriously. He had even said he didn't want to lose us as a partner. Talking it over with my mom, I couldn't help but think something felt off, but no matter how much we mulled over it, nothing would get resolved on our end. Several days passed without any contact from that company. A few days later, the factory's doorbell rang. My dad was in the workshop, and my mom had gone to make lunch. I was the only one available, so I quickly headed to the entrance. Yes? Oh, Isaac? Hello, Aaron. When I opened the door, the first person I saw was Isaac, and standing next to him. Thank you for your time. What? Mr. Yates? I did a double take. It was none other than Mr. Yates, the president of the trading company, standing right there. And next to him, unnoticed until now, was Noah, looking small and sheepish. What brings you here? Oh, please come in. Before asking about their purpose, I quickly led the three of them inside. I got them to the guest room we reserved for visitors, prepared tea, and served it to them. Could this be about that incident? Oh no, are they here to cancel the contract? I'm so sorry, Dad. Sweat began to beat on my hands. Nervously, I sat down in front of the three of them. So, what brings you here today? To my astonishment, Mr. Yates and Isaac both bowed their heads to me. We sincerely apologize. We are so sorry. The two of them apologized in unison. We heard from our receptionist about how Noah handled things the other day. We deeply apologize for his behavior. Oh no, I also raised my voice, and I'm sorry for that. No. Your anger was completely justified. I bowed my head alongside them. Then Isaac began to explain the situation. To be honest, while I was on my business trip, we were supposed to contact you to extend the discussion timeline. However, it seems someone changed that plan without permission. Isaac shot a sharp glare at Noah. This Noah took it upon himself to tell our clients that he was the new person in charge during my absence, even though I was still the official contact. He lied and called himself a temporary replacement. Why would he do that? Well, at our company, we've recently set a cost-cutting initiative as a major goal. It seems Noah was overly eager to prove himself as the first to achieve it. Isaac bowed his head again, speaking in a subdued tone. He went on to explain everything thoroughly and with great care, but to summarize, Noah apparently viewed Isaac as his rival. When the company introduced its cost-cutting initiative, Noah saw it as his chance. If he could renegotiate everything Isaac is in charge of and get the prices lowered, he'd achieve the cost-cutting goal and steal Isaac's position. It was a short-sighted and selfish plan. Noah went ahead with his plan, contacting all of Isaac's clients without permission, implementing unapproved cost-cutting measures, making sudden changes to previously settled decisions, and displaying poor behavior during meetings. Seeing this, most of the clients outright rejected Noah's proposals. Some companies even canceled their contracts entirely after dealing with him. It wasn't until Isaac started receiving termination notices that he finally realized what had happened. And that's the situation right now. We're going around apologizing to all of our clients. That's quite a mess. I couldn't find the right words to respond. For such a large corporation, they must have countless clients, and yet the president, Mr. Yates, came here personally with Isaac to apologize to us. Once again, we are truly sorry. Hey, you apologize? Mr. Yates said, nudging Noah, who stood shrinking into himself. But even as he shrank, Noah didn't look remorseful in the slightest. He didn't offer any words of apology or even bow his head. He just pouted with his lips pressed together. Hey, you're the one who caused all this trouble. Apologize properly, Isaac urged. This is ridiculous, Noah muttered. Mr. Yates, these products are clearly overpriced. Isn't this factory also at fault? Enough. Don't underestimate this screw factory. Isaac snapped, silencing Noah in an instant. Noah's posture straightened up as if snapped into attention. Even so, he began stammering and fumbling for excuses. But the market price for screws, he began, only to be interrupted. How many times have I explained that this factory produces rare, specialized screws? Isaac cut in. There's nothing special about screws. Noah muttered dismissively. Isaac and Mr. Yates let out a collective, exasperated sigh. It was clear Noah still didn't understand. I stood up, realizing there was no other way to make him see. I retrieved one of our screws and held it out to him. What now? This is one of the screws we make here. Huh. Just an ordinary screw. Noah's dismissive words made both Mr. Yates and Isaac turn pale. Are you an idiot? How can you not recognize the screw? How long have you been in this industry? Isaac asked, his voice sharp. I lifted the screw to give Noah a closer look. This screw is used in bullet trains, precision equipment, and other critical applications where lives are at stake. What? A tiny no-name factory like this makes those? Noel scoffed, clearly unbothered. The screw had a slightly different shape from ordinary ones. It was a design I had meticulously refined over the years. This factory produces screws that no other factory can, and these screws are essential components in applications where lives are on the line. As a middle schooler, I grew up watching my dad at work. Like Noah said, my family wasn't wealthy. We weren't dirt poor, but we often struggled to make ends meet. But even as a child, I understood that my dad's rare skills were highly sought after, and that he worked tirelessly to meet those needs. Watching him dedicate himself to his craft, I felt a growing desire to support him. I began imitating my dad's work, coming up with ideas of my own, and eventually learned to create things myself. Although my dad was a stoic and stubborn man who rarely smiled, he had an open mind when it came to embracing new ideas. Whenever I created a new screw, my dad would always smile, truly happy. Seeing the normally serious and busy expression on his face light up with joy made me so happy that I became fully absorbed in screw making. It must be that focus and skill I inherited from him. Now I've created a one-of-a-kind screw here in this small factory, and I take pride in this work. I don't make things that deserve to be priced carelessly, as if saying, this should do, or this seems fair. Small and rural, though we may be, the screws my family and I create are the best in the world, or so I believe. I'm not stupid enough to just lower the price because someone tells me to. I looked straight at Noel. I wasn't the person who used to be pushed around by him anymore. I took pride in my work and in myself. What about you? Do you have any pride after trying to steal someone else's work? Noah faltered, unable to respond. The room fell silent. All that could be heard was the sound of my dad hammering something in the workshop, a rhythmic clang, clang. The quiet atmosphere seemed unbearable for Noah, and slowly he bowed his head to me. I'm sorry, he said, his voice small. Noah offered me a genuine apology. I nodded, accepting it. A few days later, Noah went around personally apologizing to me and to every other client he had inconvenienced. Afterward, Mr. Yates demoted Noah, assigning him to a dead-end position often referred to as a sideline role, where he worked for a while. Somehow, word got out, and Noah became infamous as the guy who threw coffee at a client, making it impossible for him to stay at the company, ultimately leading to his resignation. Now, he appears to be quietly working at a smaller company. At my family's small-town factory, my dad and mom met again with Mr. Yates and Isaac, who apologized once more. My dad accepted, and we have since continued our partnership with their company without issue. Since that incident, Isaac has started providing regular updates. The company has also implemented stricter internal and external communication protocols to prevent similar mistakes. With these measures in place, such issues are unlikely to happen again. And so, I returned to my life of working alongside my dad every day. I found myself mirroring his serious expression as we focused on our work. Having declared my pride in our craft, I became even more dedicated to improving my skills. Watching this, my mom couldn't help but smile. like father, like son. You both make the exact same face when you're working. Her comment made me laugh. Ha. Oh, even Dad's smiling. Shut up and get back to work. Yes, Mr. Martin. I quickly peered at the screw in my hand through a magnifying glass, fine-tuning its intricate details. The screw I was working on was still in development. I hope to create another amazing screw that will make my dad smile. I want the three of us, as a family, to live even happier days together. I'm beaten today, man. I yawn. I yawned loudly aboard a packed train at morning rush hour. I'm currently working until the early hours of the morning at a bar. I was employed at a food manufacturing company as a salesperson till last month. I put in 20 years of hard work. At my job, I was an experienced worker. My customer base was strong, and I did well in sales. I got promoted year after year and even received a CEO's award in the past. This spring, an incident occurred that tainted my otherwise flawless sailing career. It all began when a major scandal arose after our parent firm was discovered to have taken shortcuts in the production of the goods. My company's financial status deteriorated as a result of the fallout. In the end, I was indirectly laid off because higher-paid managers were pushed to retire early. In a roundabout way, living expenditures were not covered by unemployment benefits alone, and the severance money was insufficient. I didn't have to worry about child support because I didn't have any children, but I was still paying for my dad's care costs because he was sick and in a facility, in addition to the house and car debts. As quickly as possible, I wanted a job. Any employment that offered a steady salary would be acceptable. When I learned that a veteran employee had left the pub, I frequently went to after work the day after I was informed of the layoff. I applied for a position right away. A good income increase came with working nights. As soon as I left the company, I started working at the bar. It's difficult to work late, but I've adapted to it. I rang the doorbell at my house, exhausted from work. My wife, Linda, usually opened the door immediately, but this time she stayed inside. What's going on? I opened the door with my key. I'm home. Linda was seated in the chair at the dining table. The room was completely black, and the curtains were still drawn even though it was morning. I looked back at her and shouted out to her, sensing the strangeness of the situation. Hey, is something wrong? She then turned to look at me. She simply mumbled, "Please let me get a divorce," and bent her head. What's going on all of a sudden? I've fallen for someone else. That's why, no matter how much I asked for a reason, she insisted on getting a divorce because she had fallen for someone else. I couldn't comprehend what had happened so suddenly, and I was at a loss for words. Linda and I had been married for 4 years. We were originally from the same hometown and high school classmates, reuniting at a class reunion. Both of us had moved to the city and found out we worked nearby, so we started going out for meals after work. Our relationship quickly developed, and it didn't take long before we decided to get married. After getting married, I didn't want to overburden her, so I asked her to quit her job and become a housewife. Since we married later in life, we hadn't planned on having kids. Linda had worked to her limits and didn't seem to have the energy for child rearing. We always talked things through and shared our feelings, and I was content thinking we were a happy couple. But that was all my assumption. Who was this person she had fallen for? Since when had she been interested in this person? Or were they already close? I had a ton of questions I wanted to ask. Just give me some time alone, please. In the silent room, I reflected on what my wife had told me. I didn't think I was such a terrible husband to be handed a divorce. I wasn't a drinker, nor did I gamble. I didn't have a history of messing around with other women. I thought I had always been kind to my wife, thought I had, since we got married. I had always been busy with work, coming home late every day, and spending weekends just sleeping due to exhaustion, hardly ever finding time to talk. Then I got laid off and started working nights. It had been a long time since we last enjoyed time together. Maybe my wife felt lonely being alone. We never even had time to talk about it. It wouldn't be strange if she found someone else who had what I lacked, something that made her unhappy. It was the result of my failure to make her happy. I suppressed my desire to cling to her and decided to accept the divorce. After that, she packed her things and left immediately, and I was left to live alone. Another day, well done, she would say with a smile. Every day, the days I took for granted now seemed like a dream. Since then, I threw myself into work every day to forget her. The bar job was harder than I thought. The business hours were from evening till 5:00 a.m. Open 365 days a year, no days off. Besides the regular operations, there was a lot to do. Making sales reports, training, and cooking, submitting reports, attending meetings. There were days I had training from 9:00 a.m. After finishing work at 5:00 a.m., I hardly had any time to sleep. But the quietness of a home without my wife was unbearable, so the tough routine was just what I needed. I was totally engrossed in my work. Max, this month, our store sales are in the top 5 nationwide, my colleague said. Oh, is that so? Sales reflect customer satisfaction. It means we've really made them happy. I replied, yes, indeed. We've been getting a lot of praise from customers lately. Just the other day, I gave a customer some soda water to clean a sauce spill on their clothes. It worked perfectly, and they were so pleased that they sent a thank you email to our store. Your trick really worked wonders, my colleague shared. That's great to hear, I said. I was recognized for my achievements and became the manager, working harder than ever. Then it happened. One morning, when I tried to get up, I found I couldn't stand. Suddenly, I was like a puppet with its strings cut, unable to move. After a while, I could slowly get up and managed to call a taxi to rush to the hospital. The doctor advised several months of rest. I was in a state of extreme exhaustion. Lying at home, I would see visions of my wife. Are you okay? I've made some soup, she'd say, but she's not here anymore. Let me forget. Unable to bear being alone, I decided to visit my mom's house in the countryside when I could move a bit. My parents' home was originally a vegetable farm, now just my mom managing it, modestly selling produce in the town market. My dad had fallen ill a few years ago and had been in and out of the hospital. The scenery of my childhood home, where I lived until high school, was as tranquil as if time had stopped. It's been a while since returning home after so many years. My mom was still as energetic as always. You get laid off, then suddenly started working all night, and now a divorce. You're just worn out, both physically and mentally. You should rest up here for a while, she said. Yeah, I will, I agreed. At home, I ate the fresh vegetables my mom grew and just slept, leading a simple life. The clear air in the countryside and delicious vegetables seemed to be healing my tired body and soul. After a while, feeling much better and energized, I went to the town supermarket. I had been relying on my mom for so long, I decided to cook for her, so I went shopping. Holding a shopping basket full of items, I lined up at the checkout and couldn't believe my eyes. Linda, my ex-wife, was working the cash register. What was Linda doing here? Her hair was longer, and she looked thinner, but it was unmistakably Linda. I changed lines to avoid being seen and quickly paid, then went to sit in my car to think about what had just happened. Why was Linda here? Had she returned to her hometown? What happened to the person she said she loved? My mind was in chaos, in a state of panic. I couldn't just let this go. Eventually, I parked my car next to the employee entrance of the supermarket and decided to wait for her to come out and talk to her. Calling her wouldn't make her come out, and I couldn't just show up at her family's home. This store was closing in another 2 hours. I thought waiting and talking to her directly was the best option. Then Linda passed by, pulling her bicycle. "Linda," I shouted, jumping out of the car. Linda looked shocked, her eyes wide open. "Max, what are you doing here?" she asked, looking down, tears welling up in her eyes. "What am I doing? What about you?" She seemed restless as she spoke. "Do you have time tomorrow? I'll email you, okay? I'll wait for your message." "Then see you tomorrow," I said. With those words, she got on her bicycle and left. On my way home, I received an email from her saying to meet at a cafe near the train station at noon tomorrow. I spent a sleepless night and headed to the meeting place with my mind in a haze. As I opened the door to the cafe, Linda was already there. She looked tired, with swollen eyelids, maybe from a sleepless night too. I sat down in front of her and ordered a coffee, then quickly drank some water. My heart was pounding, seeing her after such a long time. There were so many things I wanted to ask, but I didn't know where to start. Linda was looking down all the time. There was a long silence. She was the first to break it. "I'm sorry," she said. I couldn't find the words to reply. "Have you been well?" That was all I could muster. Then she suddenly covered her face with both hands and started crying. "How can I be okay? I had to leave you, whom I wanted to be with." "What are you talking about? You said you fell for someone else and wanted a divorce," I asked, confused, looking at her crying. Then she started to reveal something shocking. "I never told you, but I have a 3-year-old daughter from my previous marriage. My ex-husband started to believe I was cheating on him, got furious, and demanded a divorce unilaterally. No matter how much I denied it, he wouldn't believe me. The verbal fights and views just increased. I couldn't take it anymore and agreed to the divorce. Of course, I wasn't allowed to see my daughter afterward. Then, out of the blue, I got a call. He was living with his mother, who was taking care of our daughter, but she passed away. He got ill and said he couldn't take care of her anymore. I couldn't leave my child with him, but I also couldn't bring her to my home. So, I thought the only option was to divorce you and go back to my hometown to take care of her." Tears kept falling from her eyes. "I've been struggling every day, wondering what to do. I couldn't bother you with my problems, but I didn't want to leave you. There hasn't been a day I haven't thought of you. It's my fault. I had something so important and got married." "That's terrible," she said in a weak voice, crying aloud. I knew she had been divorced, but I didn't know about the child. I wish she hadn't kept it a secret, but knowing she had suffered alone all this time filled me with an overwhelming sense of heartache. "I'm sorry too, Linda. I was so wrapped up in my own issues that I didn't listen to your problems. Whether you have a child or not, my love for you doesn't change." I grasped her hand, holding a handkerchief firmly with both of mine. "Dad, I brought some vegetables with Grandma. Serve these pickles at the restaurant too," she said. "Oh, thanks. These cucumbers are really good," I replied. After that, I quit the bar I was working at, sold my house, and came back to my family home. Now I'm living here with Linda and her child. Somehow, I've started being called Dad by her daughter, and it makes me feel a bit emotional every time. Then I opened the small bar in our town. The restaurant is famous for its healthy menu made with vegetables grown by my mom, and is bustling with customers every day. "Honey, oh Max, should we also serve this onion?" she asked. "Yeah, it's made with good fertilizer, tastes great," I said. That's true. Linda is helping out at the restaurant too. My dad, who had been hospitalized, is now out of the hospital and comes to the restaurant for his rehabilitation. A few years ago, I never would have imagined returning to my hometown, opening a bar, living with my parents, Linda, and her child. There were many tough times, but they made me realize how happy I am now. Looking at everyone in the restaurant, I felt energized. All right, let's do our best today.